Fed has played basketball throughout his life. In fact, played at a pretty high level. Went up against a certain Luka Doncic, might I add.
It has now become a global game. It has now become a game that belongs to the world, not only the United States.
FIBA and the NBA have been at loggerheads for a long time. But now they've sort of come together for the league. And what do you think made that work?
There's everything to be gained and nothing to be lost when it's collaboration. So I think the tipping point there was understanding that the next 20 years, for many different reasons, are gonna have to look at the whole world rather than just the United States, rather than just Europe. Africa has produced incredible athletes, male and female. We want to have the BAL, which is now NBA subsidized, walking on its own legs in 15 years from now. And that's why the scope of the project, it extends far beyond the basketball court. It's social, it's economic, it's everything. It's far beyond basketball. And basketball, again, is just a very, very good vehicle that allows you to do that. I don't want to speak about my research too much, but one of the things that I'll be looking at specifically will be, the role that non-profit basketball organizations like the one that I'm visiting in a couple of weeks can have in building this ecosystem. But really, not that corporate bullshit we've been fed. Sorry, can I say bullshit? I said it anyway.
You can say anything on our podcast. Hey everyone, welcome back to an all-new episode of All About Sports, the podcast, a weekly sports podcast for the fans, by the fans. Joining me today is a very, very special guest. It's a dear friend of mine, Federico Battaglia.
Incredible pronunciation of my last name. Impressive, Mas. Thank you. What's up, everyone?
So before I get into what I'm going to be discussing with Fed, let me just tell you a bit about Fed. Fed's a man of the world, has lived in the US, lived in Amsterdam, lived in London. And funny enough, he's from Italy. If the name didn't tell you that, then I don't know what will. But one thing that has kept him going and has driven him throughout his life has been basketball. And that's exactly what we'll be discussing today. Fed has played basketball throughout his life. In fact, played at a pretty high level, represented his country at the juniors level. Went up against a certain Luka Doncic, might I add, back then as well. But he's just a humble guy. He's blushing now. He's turning red and he's going to just swear at me after this podcast is done. But the discussion today is going to be something very different because Fed is one of my classmates from Loughborough University. He's doing his dissertation on basketball in Africa and the role the NBA and FIBA are playing in developing the Basketball Africa League. So it's going to revolve around that. So just to give you a bit more background. So basketball in Africa specifically is run by FIBA Africa. FIBA is the international board for the game. It's not the NBA. The NBA is a private body run by the United States. The major competition run by FIBA Africa is AfroBasket, which involves all the international countries going up against each other in Africa. And then you have the Basketball Africa League, which is now at the pinnacle of the sport in the continent. And Fed is doing his research on the impact of basketball in Africa. So firstly, Fed, tell us about what was your motivation behind it. And at the same time, after that, what's the aim of the research?
All right. First of all, thank you, Mas, for having me on the podcast. Because obviously, we spoke about this a few times throughout the year, and obviously, it's a great honor. You guys do amazing work. Secondly, just a little bit, just to give a little background about myself as well. As you said, I was lucky enough to play basketball at a pretty good level growing up, which obviously played a major role in my development as a person, as an individual, and as a master's student as well. I actually never represented my country. I never played for the national team. Unfortunately, I did represent my region on multiple occasions, and I did have the opportunity to play and go up against certain players that went on to do amazing things. So that was all part of my journey. and, very much shaped the person that I am today. As I always say, without that journey, I'd probably be somewhere else, and probably somewhere not as nice in terms of, the experience that I was lucky enough to engage with. Yeah, so as you say, basically the idea of the research came from a personal interest in the continent of Africa, obviously in the game of basketball, and there's a personal attachment to the continent of Africa. As you know, my father is partly from Eritrea, which is it used to be a region of Ethiopia, has now got independence. So it's a country in East Africa, and I've never visited Africa myself, but I've been to the continent myself, and obviously there are some deep roots there within me that I've always wanted to explore. Never got the opportunity to do that, and I thought we had this amazing opportunity as university students to explore a certain topic. We have the ability to travel the world and explore a country or a continent by doing research. I feel like it would be one of the best ways to really get to know the country itself and to get to know that specific topic that you're interested in. So, mainly the motivation was, partly personal, partly, interests and passions. And lastly would be, obviously when the NBA made a move and went public with the interest of trying to establish a league in Africa in a joint venture with FIBA, that caught a lot of attention. It certainly caught my attention as a basketball fan, as an NBA fan. And as we all know, we watch basketball, we love basketball, and we know that when the NBA decides to move all the way with all its weight towards a certain objective, then very rarely does it fail. And Africa is a continent full of potential. And so it just attracted me as a concept, and I wanted to get to know more about it. And that's how the idea came about.
So you are actually heading to East Africa. You're going to be going to Kenya. You're going to Nairobi. What was the motivation behind going there specifically, and what are you trying to gain from your trip there as well?
So the main motivation for me to go to Kenya this summer came about when I got in touch with a guy called Tommaso Marino, who is a professional basketball player in Italy, has played for my hometown club, and he's also a social media personality. And he's done a lot of different things. And one of the things that he's done, and one of the things the most, from my personal standpoint, one of the most impressive things he's done as an entrepreneur is he founded a non-profit basketball academy that currently operates across 4 different continents, but it was born in Kenya 10 years ago. It's called Slams Dunk Basketball Academy. It's a social enterprise that uses basketball as a vehicle for social empowerment, social development, and so on and so forth. And I mean, it just struck me as an incredible story of 2 guys, him and the other co-founder, Bruno Ciarello, is also a basketball player, Argentinian basketball player who played in Italy for most of his career. They just went to Kenya and basically, opened up this academy out of nowhere, and kept going back year by year, summer after summer in the off season, and literally built this whole thing from scratch. And the operation is now very large again, operates across 4 different continents. Bruno is from Argentina, so they have one in Argentina, they have a couple in Africa, they have one in Italy, and they're just opening a new one up in Cambodia, in Southeast Asia. And they've grown so much, changed so many lives, using the game that we all love as the tool to do that, right? So I've always wanted to visit one of these academies. It merges all of my passions: traveling, getting to know people and cultures, and basketball, obviously. So those are the main 3 things, common denominator across my life experience so far. And I thought, what is a good way for me to approach this guy? I knew from his Instagram stories, from what he said and how he spoke about Slam Dunk, that he had a lot of interest of people just wanting to volunteer for the program, but he didn't have a lot of structure to allow for that. So I thought the only way that I had really to bring something to the table was to try to help him out in a different way, and that way turned out to be research. So I just got in touch with Tommy through a mutual contact, a coach that we both had, and he was the nicest, most open guy ever in his position. And he's just a dude, man. We just got to know each other. I told him my idea. He told me that I was very much appreciated for the idea, and that he loved it, and that we could get to work together and hopefully do some good for some people. So that's how the trip idea came about, and what I'm hoping to get out of it is a tremendous life experience. So my first time in Africa is going to be with my brother. He's going to come along. My brother Lorenzo is also former basketball player, and he's also my brother, so I love him. And we're going to go down to Nairobi, and we're going to do some interviews, some focus groups. The main idea behind it is, we have plenty of academics that write about things, speak about things, and inform policy without really ever touching what they talk about and write about. So if I'm going to advise people on something, if I'm going to consult people on something, then I want to know what I'm talking about. And I think the only way I've ever really gotten to know anything in my life was to go there, speak to the people, listen, and just kind of try to learn about the environment. So that's the idea behind the whole trip and the research as well.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds really groundbreaking in terms of what can be achieved through this, Fed, and kudos to you for like going all in. And that's one thing that we've really appreciated about you as a group in general, and we're so proud of what you are about to do. And you yourself know that whenever you set your goal on something, you do that. So it's an amazing story, firstly. Now, just coming back to what you said, let's talk a bit about the BAL. So since 2003, the NBA had launched Basketball Without Borders to just started these camps to sort of not popularize, but more so to like set up, just get more people playing basketball as, again, using it as a tool for support and for growth and development of people in the region of Africa. Now, through that, obviously, they saw that this is the biggest market, and then they set up the Basketball Africa League. So can you just share your take rather on why do you think the NBA really did this and chose Africa specifically? Because they branched out to China first, of course, and now it was like Africa's always been a sleeping giant. So what do you think was the tipping point, so to speak, for them?
I think you said it right. I think firstly, the NBA, has built itself into an international corporation. We're now in 2022, about 20 years from when they launched the first Basketball Without Borders, as you said, and looking back, there's 2 decades of expanding and globalizing the game and a rollout. I mean, there is no other league that has done it as consistently and as efficiently as the NBA. And you now have, NBA MVPs coming from Europe. You now have, draft picks, a significant percentage of the draft coming from overseas. So it's now officially a global game. If you were to put up the 5 best non-Americans against the 5 best Americans, you would have a hell of a game. And, it could, very easily go wrong for the Americans. And they understand that very well. They understand that the market is now a global market. If you said that 20-25 years ago, you get slapped in the face in America, but it's now reality. There is talent is everywhere, and that's a fact. It's a matter of finding it, refining it, nurturing it, and funneling it out, pipelining it through the system in an efficient and ethical way. Something they have been able to do remarkably well. And so, Africa, again, from business standpoint, makes total sense. It's 54 countries, largest, free trade area in the world. Demographics are unmatched worldwide. They're going to have the youngest, under 25 population in the world by 2050. Anthropometrically, from a basketball standpoint, they're obviously the most gifted continent of all. So if I were in charge of tossing a coin and deciding, which one of these continents do I want to invest the next 15 years of my operations in, it'd be a no-brainer. Absolutely. It's got to be Africa, and there is also a certain connection, between the United States and Africa. I think, so much of the league and league history, American sports in general, but particularly the NBA, has been built on the back of African-American athletes. outstanding, incredible athletes, which have contributed, in excess to what they have been retributed with, if you put it in numerical aspects, numerical terms as well. So it kind of feels like it's now time, to give back to the mother of this talent, which is the continent of Africa. And the way to do that is organically and sustainably from a social standpoint, in a way that African players shouldn't have to go to the US and abandon their families, or shouldn't have to go to Europe and abandon their families to make a living with what they're great at, which is, amongst other things, sport, and basketball in this case. So there is a very kind of almost a romantic aspect to this operation where we want to have the BAL, which is now NBA subsidized, walking on its own legs in 15 years from now, and you're going to have players, executives, marketing executives, doctors and physios that are from Africa, and that's why the scope of the project, it extends far beyond the basketball court. It's social, it's economic, it's everything. It's far beyond basketball. And basketball, again, is just a very, very good vehicle that allows you to do that. 15, 20 years from now, what I would want to see, if I were ever lucky enough to be part of this movement, would be to have, African-born people run the thing, run the show for once and develop it for themselves, and that'd be amazing. That'd be absolutely amazing.
I think you hit the nail on the head with that, Fed. I love what the NBA has done so far in terms of at least appointing people who are Africans itself to run the BAL from ground up. And that's something that is a major takeaway. I'll just come to the next question. Now, the FIBA and the NBA have been at loggerheads for a long time, but now they've sort of come together for the league. And what do you think made that work?
That's a great question, Miles. I think, the main idea behind this collaboration is obviously mutual interest. You won't convince either of those, immense organizations to just come together for fun. There needs to be interest, and there needs to be a vision behind it. I think the vision, the answer to that question, is exactly what we're in the point that we tried to make before, which is it has now become a global game. It has now become a game that belongs to the world, not only the United States. And, FIBA is the international governing body for the game of basketball worldwide. But if I were to think back and say, okay, so I think basketball, what do I think? I certainly don't think about FIBA. I think about the NBA, because they are the ones that have built this game for everyone and have inspired generations to play the game. And it was about time they came together in a long-term commitment, which went over just a yearly camp. The first collaboration they had was actually the Basketball Without Borders. That was collaboration NBA and FIBA had, but that wasn't a very large commitment. It made a huge difference for the people that went through the program and went on to become basketball stars and change lives of many back home. But in terms of scale, the BAL is a totally different ball game, and I think there is everything to be gained and nothing to be lost from this collaboration. So I think the tipping point there was understanding that the next 20 years, for many different reasons, are gonna have to look at the whole world rather than just the United States, rather than just Europe, and Africa seems like a sensible next stop to really go on.
Now, we both read the ESPN article about the NBA's plan to find the next Giannis in Nigeria. Is there scope for this to happen with the WNBA too? Do you think that they will launch a women's basketball league in Africa, let's say within the next 5 years? Do you see that happening?
I think that's something that everyone wants to see happening. I don't see any good reason for that not to happen. Africa has produced incredible athletes, male and female, and WNBA is a growing league, just like the NBA.
So moving on, Fed.
Yeah.
Next question is, how can the NBA's expansion be this catalyst for the future of tourism in the region? Because obviously we know that sport has a massive impact on the GDP of every African nation. So where do you think the BAL can take Africa in terms of tourism? Because we've read a lot about, there have been a lot of articles, you and I have been reading those as well, around the additional benefits of the BAL to the region. So what's your take on that?
Yeah, exactly. You're correct in pointing that out, Matt. I think the BL has hundreds of collateral benefits that haven't been really accounted for in the regional plans, and tourism obviously being one of those. I mean, Africa is a continent, and certain specific countries of Africa even more are very popular touristic destinations already, and some of the people that travel to Africa are Europeans, are Americans, are people from India, anywhere really. So it's a very popular destination, and people love sport, and that's just a fact. I think what the NBA gets right is a very simple things, and they get the very simple things very right. I mean, like tourism and sports go hand in hand. Mega events and tourism are often put together and in the same package by universities as well. There are sports, leisure, and tourism programs in every university, and that's there is a reason for it, which is people will travel, and people will travel to beautiful places, and people will travel to beautiful places to watch sport, and if they can watch high level basketball, then that's an additional reason for it. So I mean, it's gonna come down to the quality of the events, and I can assure you, I've spoken to some people, and all you need to do is watch some tape of these 2022 players of the BAL, and you will see all you need to see. I mean, like, those games are a different level of entertainment, and I myself would have loved to go down there. Now, COVID certainly impaired that first couple years of that are usually very important for the initial propulsion and the initial jump. But I'm confident that the BL will pick up again in the next 5, 6, 7 years, and it'll be amazing. So tourism is definitely a huge pillar of the operation. Absolutely, no questions asked.
The BAL has Fed already got a valuation of over $1 billion, that is. And like you said, 2 years gone by with COVID. And I mean, Africa's had its fair share of other problems as well in terms of different sort of things they've had to deal with throughout. And it just seems like it's a country plagued with something or the other. So BAL definitely helped bring some joy and fun to a continent that has just seen the harsh side of everything pretty much. My final question is, what is next for basketball in Africa, and where do you see, what does the future hold for the NBA as well eventually? Do you think they are going to sort of create a draft channel from Africa into the NCAA? Of course, that's something the NBA doesn't really control, but eventually, if there is something, then the scouts will start driving into that and then scouting for the NCAA teams.
There are endless possibilities. Again, when such giants of sport just collide and come together in these collaborations, the sky's the limit. Really, there is no upper ceiling to what can be done. It'd be very much on the executives on deciding, what direction it needs to take. I don't want to speak about my research so much, but one of the things that I'll be looking at specifically will be, the role that non-profit basketball organizations like the one that I'm visiting in a couple of weeks can have in building this ecosystem. I think the real game changer to build an ecosystem organically and sustainably, but really not that corporate bullshit we've been fed. Sorry, can I say bullshit? I said it anyway.
You can say anything on our podcast.
Basically, I think our generation, what we have to get right is that we've been fed that bullshit corporate propaganda for too long. Greenwashing is almost a euphemism, a compliment for what we've been fed for 20 years now. And I think the role that we have is to really adopt a no bullshit policy on strategy and policy making, and say, what is the best for the people? The game belongs to the people. It is a private corporation for profit, clearly. But if there is one corporation that I trust in doing this correctly, is the NBA. Now, the way that I see it is local realities, local organizations that have skin in the game, that want this to happen because they need it, can play a massive role in the development from the ground up. I don't believe in the helicopter approach that Europeans and Americans have used, Westerners in general have used in continents such as Africa for forever. Really, they arrive, they think they know how to run things, they don't understand the culture, they don't care because they think they do it right anyway. They just drop whatever, put some money, pay some officials, and then they go back. Something happens. Obviously it won't work because you need people to run things, people to care. And I think the only way to do that is involving people that care, people that have skin in the game. And that's really how you build an anti-fragile system, which is something that, a concept that I'm borrowing from Nassim Taleb and applying it to the sports ecosystem. I would want to see, as I said in the opening line, I would want to see young Africans take charge, young Africans, build their continent back up from the ground up organically in a truly, truly socially sustainable way. I think that is the future. And in 15, 20 years from now, I think what I want to see is a certain degree of independence of the BAL. And we understand that, it's NBA subsidized and there are going to be ties that, are obviously binding, and that's okay. But I think what people want to see now is that, we understood that there is more to profit. There is more than profit, to basketball. And the returns, the long-term returns on that, to social capital, the real sustainability that can be gained out of it are tremendous. And it's our duty as sports managers of the future to really be gatekeepers for that sort of approach and mentality. So these are the wishes that I have.
When Fed talks, sometimes it makes you wonder how old he is. But sharing so much wisdom at such a tender age, but it's amazing. It's an amazing story, Fed, and it's quite clear for everyone to see that your passion for the game and for having an impact on society at large is clearly evident. And you're a man of the world, not because you've lived in several places and because you've traveled the world and seen things. It's because you genuinely care about other people. And I think that will hold you in good stead as well going forward. I'm sure everyone who watches this will learn a lot from it and have a lot to take away about. Definitely your knowledge about the BAL specifically as well is probably unmatched, I would say, because it's one thing that no one really has understood clearly. To be honest, I myself, who has been following this for a long, long time, is still very unclear. But now I think you've answered all of those questions. Now, coming just to end the podcast on a slightly light note, we always do this with all our guests. It's a quick rapid fire. It's just going to be very basic stuff. I'm going to ask you questions. Don't think too much. Give me an answer straight away. So I'm going on with the first one. And this is all off the cuff for me as well. So it's kind of like a rapid fire for me too. So the first one is LeBron James or Luka Doncic?
LeBron.
How? I really thought you'll take some time for that one, but you're clearly too sure about it. Okay. If you had to choose between meeting Giannis for one day or eating dinner with Megan Fox, what would you pick?
Where am I going to dinner though?
It's just dinner. I mean, it could be McDonald's. I don't know. It's Megan Fox.
Megan Fox is my childhood crush. So, I mean, I love Janice, but it had to be Megan. I think it has to be Megan this one.
Yeah, man. Honestly, I think it's too tough. If it's Megan Fox, you can't say no. It's as simple as that.
It's a difficult one.
Okay. Difficult one. J. Cole or Quavo, the better basketball player?
I think Quavo is pretty good, man. I watched him tape of Quavo is decent. I think could have gone on to play some serious basketball. I don't think he ever got the opportunity. J. Cole now plays in the Canadian basketball league, right? There is one thing to be said about that. When the coach subs you in and one of your bangers is playing in the background, I think it doesn't get much better than that, does it? So I mean, that J. Cole has done it, but I think Quavo, talent-wise, might have something more.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, it was a tough one. I was giving this a thought myself, and I couldn't come up with an answer because I wasn't sure. Because Quavo's a multiple-time MVP in the All-Star game. That's not much to go by, but still.
Yeah, Chris Brown is actually a really good basketball player as well.
Drake's pretty good as well. Like I think they've all just got it, man. They've got the talent. Pogba's pretty good too, but his documentary is not as successful as his basketball skills, and it's the lowest rated documentary ever so far on IMDb. It's 1.1
in the history of documentaries. Literally,
it's 1.1, and the lowest rating you can give is 1. That's how bad it is.
Oh my god! Yeah, not even his mother gave him 5 stars, man. That's sad. God damn.
It's out of 10. It's out of 10.
Oh, it's out of 10. It's out of 10. Oh wow! I thought it was 5. Damn, no, that's terrible. God damn.
He's a disgrace.
Absolute disgrace.
With the worst documentary ever. Who would have thought? This one's a tricky one. Would you rather have Jimmy Butler's defense or Jason Tatum scoring?
That's a good question. I think Jay Tatum is a very, very strong offensive player. But I think he's an elite attacker. But I think Jimmy Butler's defensive skills are just, all-star level. So, they say, offense wins games, but
defense wins championships. Agreed. And one last question to round it off. Who's going to win MVP next year? Regular season MVP. I'm not going to test you at finals MVP.
Oof. That's a tough one, man. I just want to go with Luka, just because, I just love the kid, and I think Luka has everything that it takes to win a regular season MVP in the NBA. I'm also a hopeless romantic, so I'd say if it was ever to happen, another LeBron MVP, I'd just, that'd be everything. That'd be everything, absolutely everything. I think, that's a very political award as well, so obviously we understand the dynamic go behind it. I think personally, LeBron should have won it at least, I don't know, what is it, 17 or 18 seasons that he's played in the NBA? 2003, 2022? So, yeah, I think he should have won it at least 60% of the time, 70% of the time. I mean, the guy was unbelievable for at least 15 of those 17 seasons. So he's just on a different level. But, realistically, I want Luka to have it next year.
I think fair enough. I am the hopeless romantic here, and I'm going to pick LeBron James to win it. But that's also because I need the Lakers to win. So it's as simple as that.
Tell me about it.
But anyway, absolute pleasure to have you on board, Fed. This was in the works for a long time. Apologies, sincere apologies for not making this happen earlier. But it's been a great time. For all those viewers who tuned in, thank you so much. You know the drill. Like, share, subscribe, comment. If you want to get in touch with this amazing Italian stallion that we have here, then just hit us up as well. He's more than happy to share his thoughts on basketball. And he's sitting in Italy right now, but you can potentially catch him at London at some point as well. But actually, now we never know. He'll be in Kenya soon and could be somewhere else again. But again, pleasure to have you, Fed, and thank you all for tuning in. Till next week, take care, stay safe, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
If you like this episode, make sure to leave a like and share it with anyone else who might be interested. You can also subscribe on any social media platform that you prefer, and all our links are in the bio. We also have a website with all our episodes as well as blogs and a whole lot of other sports content, so make sure to check that out as well.